How does an entrepreneur become more authentic and understand what it means for them to be authentic? Because I'm not sure we actually ask ourselves that question.
We all can produce such great quality now because of AI. So what is the experience we're giving our customers that is so thrilling, that really buys them in on a loyalty element? Because when people ask what I charge, I give the price and then I say why. So the more we're actually incorporating why, the more people see the human behind it, and people want to engage with humans more than ever. We have probably a litany of those crossroad moments in our lives where it's like, if I go in this direction, something is going to change forever in my life. We've never had more money. We've never had more access. We've never had more virtual ability to have connection. And we've also never seen such high suicide rates and depression. What is going on? You know what I mean? Like, there's an epidemic.
What's an entrepreneur to do when they go, okay, I want to be more authentic? How do they do that? Hi, and welcome to the AI Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Mast, and I am really excited today to have Christine with me. Christine and I had the pleasure of meeting at actually one of her dinners that she holds recently in Washington, D.C., and we've been speaking on similar stages for a long time and had never actually connected, and I was out in D.C., and she's like, Jonathan, you've got to join us at one of our dinners, and I did, and had just the most amazing time, and actually got to sit and chat with a quantum computer architect, which was an amazing conversation, a whole separate thing. But Christine, I'm so happy to have you here with us today to chat. And one of those topics that I'm really excited to dig into is so important today with AI is kind of the whole emotional intelligence aspect as it relates to AI. And with AI, certainly in my life, it's very big. It is in a lot of us. Yeah. So if you would, before we dive into that, since I can't do justice for an introduction, could you tell everybody who you are and kind of who you serve, and then we'll have a conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Jonathan, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for extending the invitation and allowing me to come into your home along with all of you joining into your home. Y'all, I met Jonathan at what he was sharing was a knowing dinner, and knowing is kind of the heartbeat of my mission and really what I feel called to. It was a transformation process I went through of, honestly, I call it like waking up. That was the process that it really felt like for me when I really first kind of woke up to myself and woke up to who I really was, as opposed to who I had been living as everyone else wanted me to be. I think of it as kind of, I've been living for the horizontal, looking to my right and to my left to tell me who to be and how to show up. And I just had never really stepped into, okay, well, who am I? Who was I made to be uniquely? And the thing about that correlates with what I do today, which is so much branding and marketing for founders and also for family-led service businesses, specifically home service businesses. So much of that is, man, you're a brand. You and I are brands.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people don't realize that. And so as I kind of came to know who I am, my brand reflected that. And then it reflected in my mission and the way that I want to serve people and who I'm serving. All of a sudden, clarity was the through line as I came to know who am I. But for so long as we live just in reaction and in response to everyone around us, man, it's going to be so hard for us to actually be able to ensure that we're creating something original, because origin stems from within us. And, being able to even prompt engineer these AI tools to create something that's truly unique. We have to be able to have the ability to even access that for ourselves. And so this whole process of knowing, it translates into the business on the branding and marketing side, but then also on the individual level of just really helping people have breakthroughs. And the knowing dinners is like an experience manifestation of that. We've got a few other experiences that we have, retreats and one-to-one working with folks, but this concept of knowing has just radically changed my life and a lot of other people's lives as well. So.
Well, and I think it's important. I think, oftentimes we go through big parts of life. And as you mentioned, we spend time trying to be who we believe others want us to be. And we're focused on that and not necessarily understanding who we are. Talk to us a little bit about that journey for you. What caused you to make that decision, Christine? That it's like, I really want to understand who I am, because it's not only important for me, but it's also important for my business.
Yes.
Because again, our audience is a lot of entrepreneurs. And I know a lot of us as entrepreneurs, yes, we have we have our brand, who we say we are, but at the same point in time, that's not necessarily always authentically us because of a host of situations, not
Mhm.
necessarily saying anything bad. But talk to me a little bit about in your case, what was that transition like, and what I guess maybe was that straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, that said,
Mhm.
hey, I really I want to focus more on understanding who I am and what I'm destined for, as opposed to what everybody else is telling me I should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm so glad you asked that question because Jonathan, I was kind of forced into it. I think for every single one of us, we can self-induce our own awakening if we choose. Otherwise, the
Hmm.
world is going to force us into it. And even still, we have the option to choose. It's like a crossroads moment. And I think for most everyone listening, we have probably a litany of those crossroad moments in our lives where it's like, if I go in this direction, something is going to change forever in my life versus this direction. And so for me, I grew up in a very Christian conservative household and got married at 20 years old, as a good Christian girl did. And I was married for 8.5 years, and my former husband ended up walking away. And it was so devastating, and so many times people were actually congratulating me. And I was like, you don't understand, like my future and my world is crashing around me. And I was so heartbroken. And all of a sudden, all the love songs made sense. And I was just like, this is so sad. And I really, no one in my community had been through something like that. Again, I just was kind of in a very sheltered type of environment where
Hmm.
everybody who got married stayed married. My parents have been married 40 years in April. So there was something about just that whole experience where I knew that I was at a crossroads moment. I could either blame him for the rest of my life, and with good reason he left, but also, what did I do? How did I contribute to that? How and what was my part that led to the disillusionment of my future? And so rather than, pointing the finger at him, I was like, okay, let me look at those four fingers pointing back at me and look in the mirror. And that was a really powerful moment for me. I remember it distinctly. I was out sitting outside talking to a therapist. I had never been to therapy because I viewed emotions as weakness. But as I really came to understand, oh my gosh, emotions are actually data points, and they're automatic.
Mm.
They're not necessarily to be ignored or suppressed, because otherwise we're keeping data down that could warn us, give us insight into future direction. So this concept of emotional intelligence, there's actually kind of two parts to the definition. The first half of emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware of, uh, be in control of, and express one's own emotions, and the ability to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and with empathy. So wisely and with empathy. But I had been existing in the second half of it without any kind of presence in the first. And so, what ends up happening if we're trying to engage in relationship with other people without any kind of authentic presence, you used that word earlier, that type of engagement with empathy can really turn into manipulation. It's really, really
Mm.
slippery slope. If it's not rooted and grounded in, hey, by the way, I know the truth of who I am and I'm actually speaking the truth. And this same goes for brands. If we're actually not leading and going first, and saying, hey, this is the truth about my service and product and delivery. This is what fulfillment's going to look like. This is the anticipated experience. We could end up manipulating people into doing business with us only to have them have a kind of a poor experience. And so the authenticity of ourselves, the authenticity of our brands really go hand in hand so that we can actually have true empathy, which is where people feel really seen, and just being able to move in that direction of working with them.
You talk a lot about authenticity, and I love that, and I love what that means. I know what it means to me.
Mm,
As the average business owner and entrepreneur, what do you think authenticity looks like or means to them as they transition? Because I
mm,
think we talk about that a lot, about being authentic, but then as we show up, we often go, well, yeah, but I need to do this because that's the expectation in this situation, or I need to do this, or I need to act a certain way, say a certain thing. How does an entrepreneur become more authentic and understand what it means for them to be authentic? Because I'm not sure we actually ask ourselves that question.
That's so good. That's such a good question. Frankly, what I want to do is pull up my phone and look up the root word. I love looking up like the Latin or Greek word, just like the genesis of a word. I
Mm.
did that with the word intention the other day, and it was like a treasure trove. Authentic, I wish I could give like the Latin root of authenticity is, and I don't know if you're doing that one yet, but what I have experienced was the ability to really do the work myself to know what is true for my experience and true about who I am. And then
Mm.
being able to, this is the second half of the emotional intelligence, wise, like acting wisely in relationship with other people, and what we post online and what we share and what comes out doesn't mean that there's a difference between authenticity and vulnerability. So I actually before I talk about the kind of external manifestation of
That's good. Yeah.
authenticity, yeah, vulnerability is effectively kind of like an open wound. It's still raw, we're still processing it, we're still effectively in the learning process of whatever the lesson is going to become.
Hmm.
And authenticity is like, these are my scars. So it's the difference between a wound and a scar. So these are my scars. This is the lesson learned. This is the aftermath. Maybe you're on the tail end of that learning. You're at the tail end of the wound, but it's not
Hmm.
oozing and gushing out blood. It's not gross.
Yes.
There's this concept around a vulnerability hangover. When we do engage kind of at an improper moment in time where we're kind of oversharing, and we're also sharing or presenting ourselves to meet our needs. There's a whole, like, if we want to create a whole checklist, and maybe Jonathan, you're prompting me to do this, create a whole checklist of like, what is authenticity not? Where does it air into vulnerability? And what is
Ooh,
it?
that's good.
Because if we're sharing to meet our own needs because we're being self-focused, another element of an authentic true brand is that yes, we tell the truth about who we are. Yes, we set the stage to set the experience and anticipated experience that someone's going to have, but it's really positioning other people still as the hero. We're not self-focused,
Mm.
self-absorbed. And there's a big
Hmm.
difference there. So it's really the integration of the authentic empathy coming together so that we're not becoming self-absorbed brands, where we're talking about
I
ourselves a lot.
love that. Yeah.
So,
It's not all about us, obviously. I mean,
yeah.
as much as some of us want it to be, it just isn't, because if we don't serve those that we
Yes.
are serving, then there is no us. I mean, we go away at that point in
I
time.
know.
I love that.
It's so true, Jonathan. And that's even such a good question. Like, if we were to do an authenticity audit, am I really being brave enough to have demarcating, like, delivery around what it is that we're doing? Am I really clear about who I'm serving and being willing to say, you're not our ideal? Because if we're not clear
Mm.
about our non ideal, then that means that we probably aren't as clear around our ideal as we might think that we are. And so that's
So
another
good.
aspect of really getting clear on who we're serving, who don't we want to serve? And one of those things, this is where being authentic is actually really, really beautiful, is because if we have a why we're showing up the way that we are in terms of our brand positions, our values, our why needs to propel pretty much every single interaction. And I even
Mm.
had someone come to me a year ago and unsolicited, and say, Christine, I started adding my why in as I've been selling. I have had higher conversion rates than ever before, because when people ask what I charge, I give the price and then I say why. So the more we're actually incorporating why, the more people see the human behind it, and people want to engage with humans more than ever with how we're coming out into, this AI environment. Jonathan, you said this. You're like, I show up physically even though I have this AI avatar. Like, you are such a beautiful embodiment of why authenticity matters and the physical presence even in an AI age as you're teaching it. So I just
Well,
love
thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, if you wonder, Christine and I had been on her podcast, and we talked about the fact that I'm not a big proponent of the AI video
Mm,
replicants, so to speak. I don't want to be an AI video. I want people to see me on video. And
yeah.
is that a pain? Yeah, I mean, it does mean more work, but I believe from a branding perspective, being authentic long term, that makes a lot of difference. If I tell people, look, it's not an AI version of Jonathan up there, and I don't, and people that do that, by the way, I have no problem with that. But for me, that choice for me to be authentic
Mm,
means at this point I have to show up to be the one to do that.
yeah.
That kind of brings me to the next question I've got is, somebody's listening, they're going, okay, Christine, this makes sense. I like where you're going. I feel it's time to do this. How does one determine what it means for them to be authentic? Because I
Mm,
believe this means asking sometimes some tough questions
yeah.
of ourselves, that candidly can be kind of uncomfortable. It's easier sometimes just to go, well, I'm supposed to do this, so I'll do that because I know that.
Right.
It can be difficult to get to those authentic questions. How do you recommend doing that? What's an entrepreneur to do when they go, okay,
Mhm.
I want to be more authentic? How do they do that?
Yeah, I such a good question, and I would encourage everyone to ask that. Um, Y'all, the knowing framework is something that I moved through and then created a framework around. So this is something I've done. I've done the work. I'm not one of those
Yep.
ones who's like, let me tell you what to do, and I've never done it myself. There's the framework has three questions, effectively moving through the past, the present, into our potential. But the three questions are, who was I? How is the past showing up and manifesting in the present? What are those core moments, those core stories that shape now, today in the present, a mindset or even like a physical behavioral manifestation? Because when we as
Mm.
entrepreneurs are looking at the way we engage with money, the way we engage in real with our partners, with our clients, whatever our tendencies are, if we whether they're good or bad, they're rooted in a story. And the more we actually do the work to uncover and kind of trace the roots down to the core moment or core memory or story of when that happened that shaped my behavior today, it's effectively like we've got a belief in a behavior. So each one of those is rooted in a core memory in the past. So then when
Mm.
we're in relationships with our teams or we're having a dialogue, even just the other day I was hosting a webinar with two folks from Harvard, and both of them work with leaders in corporate. And so much of what they're doing is helping, one of them's a therapist, one of them is a coach. And the therapist himself was like, if there's not psychological safety in your work environment, people are not going to be able to feel free and brave enough to be creative if the idea opposes what the leader says. So there's really very, we're talking about being authentic. There's an element of, okay, how am I feeling? How am I doing that analysis? But okay, well, how am I being perceived? Is the perception aligning with who I think and say that I am? And so with these three questions,
Mm.
well, who was I? What are those core moments and memories? How does that show up in a belief and a behavior today? And who am I? So that's the second question. Who am I? And then third, well, who do I want to be? Am I actually the entrepreneur that I want to be? Am I actually the leader I say that I want to be? The husband, the father, the partner? Am I actually my own ideal? Because the reality is
Mm.
we can create our own ideal, but we have to do so with intention. And I love that this came back up because the Latin word of intention means that it's the body, mind, spirit, soul. It's all encompassing, like every faculty of us as we intend to do something. So it's really kind of engaging all parts of us with whatever we set out to do. And I just love that because it's not just a pie in the sky goal that we set out in terms of, oh, I want to be
Mm-hmm.
this way, I want to do this thing. No, what is my true intention? Really getting my whole self engaged in that intention and then moving forward to be that person. And the being of the person informs the doing, like the execution, the external action. So everything reverberating around me on the horizontal is a reflection of how I am. So if I need money, well then I might actually have some do I actually have some weird hangups around money that might not really be allowing me to be as ready to receive it. I've seen that a
Mm.
lot, Jonathan.
Yeah.
So those are
Mm.
those three questions. Who was I? Who am I? And who do I want to be? Understanding the core memory, the manifestation, and then frankly, what's the new way of being, the new target, the new ideal? And then identifying the reason why it's helpful to identify those old I like narratives is because they
Mm-hmm.
really do psychologically guide us today if we don't bring them into our awareness. And then once we bring them into awareness, then we can change them.
Love that. Thank you for digging into that in such detail.
Mm.
I'm curious, from your perspective, we talked about this a little bit at the Knowing Dinner, but how do you see AI's preponderance and
Mhm.
its just infiltration into our lives? How do you see that affecting authenticity from your perspective and those that you talk to?
Hmm. Man, I appreciate this question too, Jonathan. I mean, it's in so many different categories and ways. I'll start with even just the ability to um, really hold ourselves to the same standard of critical thinking and excellence as we did before. It's actually more important than ever that we know how to engage critical thinking to really allow for an experience with AI. So I think a lot of times we see people going negative rather than, well, what are the positive elements of what AI is doing with our world today and us? How can we actually alchemize it? Because I think that for so long as we live in fear of it, it actually has the ability to do more harm than good. But if we're actually being uh, coming at it with the position of alchemy, man, is this a powerful tool. And so with critical thinking, that aspect, I actually heard this from someone and I just love what he said. The way that we're engaging with it needs to be from an experiential lens and really coming at it with the curiosity of, hey, you're the most powerful tool there ever can be and will be probably. I want to create this kind of experience for my clients, for my family. I took that experiential prompting direction even as I was planning a fun weekend for my family and said, this is the experience. This is how I want them to feel. This is how I want them to perceive me or perceive the event or whatever it is. Can you create what you would anticipate to be the experience, the activities we do, the moments, the pauses? And it was amazing. And it is still amazing because it's creating better outputs than if I was to say, I want to craft an email campaign. I wanted to say this, this, and this. Can you fill in the blanks? Rather, I'm allowing it to be its own power source and really truly conjure up what would best serve the audience, best serve the anticipated experience. But I still have to have that ability to think critically and incorporate emotional intelligence in that of what do I want them to do and feel? Both of those aspects, because people buy off of emotion. Harvard found that, what is it, 95% of our buying decisions take place in our subconscious, which is where our emotions live. So our customers are buying off of emotion. So we need to establish that emotional connection. So that's number one, creating experiences. And y'all, more and more, this is my prediction, is that when we've already been seeing this with some of the data, that people will pay more for a better experience.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, yeah.
the biggest differentiator is going to be experience between companies, because their offerings, especially digital companies, we all can produce such great quality now because of AI. So what is the experience we're giving our customers that is so thrilling, that really buys them in on a loyalty element? How are we doing that for our teams and our employees so that they're so bought in on the mission and who we are? How are we just treating them like gold? So that's kind of like the positive side that I really love about what we can do with AI. We can really enhance living and enhance the experience through AI.
I love that. It's such great insight. I think you're right. I think it's just opening up more opportunities to really, from a branding perspective, set ourselves aside by being truly authentic. Because as much as I love AI, I'll readily admit, one of the downsides to AI is that there's a lot of people trying to do things kind of hand off to AI, I guess, without being involved in it. And that's about as inauthentic, I think, as people can get.
Yes.
I also see those people not being successful at what they're doing as a general rule. They may have a blip, it's kind of like anybody who's inauthentic in life. We may have a blip of popularity or a blip of success, but then generally when our audience starts seeing that who we are doesn't align with who we said we are, things tend to crash. And I see that happening with AI actually probably on a faster scale because,
Wow.
it used to maybe take years for those clarity to come through, and now it can often come through in weeks because we can see how people are acting and what they're doing because of the speed that brings in. So, I love where you're going with all that. Tell me a little bit about, I want to take a little pivot and go into your knowing dinner. So that's where you and I met in person, and it was a unique experience. And can you tell our audience a little bit about them, how they hold them, and if they're interested, what that might look like?
Yeah. So the knowing dinner, frankly, I have found, Jonathan, time and time again, the more I solve my own problems, a lot of other people want that solution too. So I solved my own problem by creating these knowing dinners, and people have just loved them. And so effectively, it's a very invite only curated room, because the goal is that we have really intentional, meaningful conversations. Like that's the goal, is that we're really able to connect. And,
yes,
there's something around, what is the goal of knowing? The goal of knowing is, I talked earlier about creation, really being able to come up with something truly original from us. Otherwise, we're just replicating what everyone else is doing and being a mirror. That's not
Hmm.
interesting. And then another part of knowing is for the purpose of connection, like true meaningful connection. And so again, if the way we're showing up with other people is rooted in something authentic and genuine, man, is that connection going to be so much more vibrant than if we're all coming in and replicating each other. And so with these knowing dinners, the goal is connection between all of us. And so I come with a question. I come with a question that is effectively a prompt that causes everyone to go deep in their answer. So, for example, one of the dinners
Mm.
I had, and I usually never allow for more than 9. Like I had 9 one time, and I was like, this is too much because it takes so
That
long
would be a lot for, yeah,
to go
yeah.
around. And so I honestly, this one of the questions I asked was, what would freedom look like for you, and why are you not pursuing that? And
Ooh, that's good.
it got deep, like people. And because here's the thing, I give people warnings, so this is part of having a good branding experience, is to set the expectation. I tell people,
Sure.
at dinners we go really deep. At times people have cried. So if that doesn't feel like a good fit for you, I'd love to catch up with you another time, but otherwise I would love to have you. So it kind of sets the people come in already kind of open, which is so incredible. And so we have these really meaningful conversations. Some of them have lasted 4 hours. Others have been, an hour and a half, and it's just been really meaningful. And it's the purpose of the in-person touch points, because especially with the rise of AI, I really have found, and I think it will only continue to increase. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. I think people are more hungry for like touching and feeling and experiencing than ever before.
I think, that AI gives us, well, not even AI, Zoom and
Mm,
telecommuting gives us the opportunity to meet and connect like we've never had the opportunity
yes.
before to do. But it only goes so far. That relationship can only get to a certain level over video. I mean, it's great. It's better than the phone and all that. And I think it allows us to connect. At least in my case, it's allowed me literally to connect with people worldwide.
Me too.
But those personal connections, the depth of how I feel, I know you, Christine, changed dramatically between a virtual meeting and a physical
Mm,
meeting. Sharing dinner, breaking bread,
yes.
that was important. I was recently in Dallas at an event, and I think it was 8 people from my mastermind were also at the event. These are people that I've worked with for almost 2 years in many cases, but have never met in person.
Mm,
And the opportunity to literally hang out in person and just, you know, share dinner, share breakfast, talk was just an amazing thing. And it really deepened those relationships. And we all agreed there. And I think this is what you're saying, that where we're at, especially post COVID, with the opportunity to connect and all
mm,
that, has made those personalized in person connections even more valuable. Now, we can maintain relationships and all that, but you have to have that at some level to really impact it. It creates such a deeper connection. And I
yes.
feel like I know all of those people in my mastermind so much better because we literally hung out for 2 days.
Yeah.
Not a long time in the big picture, but we built up a good base. We then solidified it in an in-person meeting, and now our relationships are at another deeper level because of those personal interactions we had.
Mm, I love that, Jonathan. What the heck? Honestly, it's so true. I love the example of 2 years you've been in this mastermind. And then how much distance was traveled just by being in person. It gets me excited
Hmm.
because I think that there's a new wave of community and connection that's going to come through this. And it makes me excited because man, I was reading this book the other day, and it was like we've never had more money. We've never had more access. We've never had more virtual ability to have connection. And we've also never seen such high suicide rates and depression. And it's just like, what is going on? You know what I mean? Like there's an epidemic. And I just think that, man, it's never been more important than ever to know who you are, and never been more important than ever before to be in relationship with people and to really feed yourself, like this mastermind you're doing. Like how incredibly important that over the last 2 years they've been able to evolve over, like look at how much has changed. And thank God
Yeah.
that they were able to do that with you. And then the meeting in person, man, it's so fulfilling and so rewarding. So I just wanted to double click that because I think that, as folks are looking and considering, okay, how do I expand my services, solutions, products to extend customer lifetime value? Think about in person. Is there something you
Hmm.
could be doing, especially this time of year? I one of my best marketing tactics was I spent $25, got $150,000 back. And all I did was send a
Wow.
$25
Can
gift.
we do that twice today, please?
It was a Christmas gift 4 years ago. A $25 gift, including shipping. I sent it to someone and I got a $150,000 contract. And I think it might have been more over time, but like, y'all, just do the in-person touch points. And it doesn't have to be physically you in person, but something to their mailbox, something to their home, something to them that they really resonate with. Another gentleman of mine during COVID, during lockdown, he sent out socks rolled up like sushi. Had nothing to do with
Oh,
the
wow.
business, but people got such a kick out of it. They were calling and like they just thought it was so funny. So if you're looking at whether it's a new product line or new service or something to extend, CLV, or just do a touch point this Christmas time, y'all. One of our clients, were fractional CMO for them, and y'all, they did not think that this would work. But I was like, well, just trust me. Let's see. Like, what's the worst that can happen? They had an unengaged list of about 9,000 people. And so, not a massive list, but they're B2B, right? So, out of one of those, you could get millions and millions of dollars worth of contracts. So, I was like, well, let's just do this little holiday campaign. And so, we sent it out to 9,000 people. They hadn't engaged with them in years. And we ended up
Wow.
just saying, hey, we'd love to send you a Christmas gift. And we got 200 submissions back, and they were just shocked. They were like, no way are these companies going to come back and want anything. Y'all, there's a dead email list probably waiting for you if you're willing to give them something.
Oh, I love that. I love database reactivation because it's so easy as a business to focus on those new customers that are coming in and those ones that are paying us money today. And I'm guilty myself of forgetting to reach out to those people that have in the past and maybe just need to have you reach out and say a hi.
Yes. Yes. And they already gave you money. Much easier to convert
Yeah.
them than new folks.
Oh, yes.
I love
100%. Well, Christine, I want to thank you for your time today. We're wrapping up quickly on the we could talk forever, but on the time that we have.
it.
If people are interested in understanding a little bit more about you and connecting, Christine, what's the best way for them to reach out and do so?
I go live every day on The Knowing Show on Facebook, so they can follow me there, or christinemarie.com is another good one. I'm going to be revamping the site come 2026, where a lot has changed in the last 18 months. So either one of those is good. But Jonathan, thank you. This was such a privilege to be here and with your group. I know that you've built so much trust equity, and I just feel privileged to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us and sharing again. I think it's so relevant in what you're dealing with. I think authenticity, as you know, is something that I try to really wear right on my sleeve. I want to be very incredibly authentic, and I believe it works well in business because it draws the people to you that resonates with. And that's okay. You don't have to be everything to everybody. And I say that partly to myself because I was nearly 50 years old. I was a lot older than you, but before I realized it, that you didn't need to be everything to everybody. And it's an incredibly freeing thing, both as a business and as an individual, to be able to say, this is who I am. I'm not going to be an arrogant jerk about it unless that's who you are, but I'm not. But, this is who I am. And this is, again, as you said, being authentically me is so incredibly important in that. So thank you for sharing that today, for sharing a bit about your journey and that, and grateful for the time you took. I'm also grateful, by the way, for everybody that's listening and been hanging out with us today. We really value you and we truly appreciate you guys joining us. We'd love your feedback. Please subscribe and, of course, give us those thumbs up. We love those as well. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the other side. Bye, everybody.